Welcome to the Eat Your Content podcast, your home for all things food and pop culture. I am once again your host, Rich Herrera. Thank you for tuning in. Just a reminder to follow me on socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content. And a couple of programming reminders. The Bear Season 3 drops all episodes on June 27th. I will be doing episodic recaps of all 10 of those episodes as I can. So make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss any of those. And also, big announcement, I have an interview with seventh place finisher Chef Suan on Top Chef. His podcast, our recording of that podcast will be up on Wednesday, June 19th. So just in a couple of days. So make sure you are liking and following and subscribing. You're hitting that bell notification button so you know when that interview drops. We talked about some really fun stuff about his time on Top Chef and some things that did not quite make it in that I will share with everybody next week after that interview drops. So make sure you like and follow and subscribe. With me this week to recap Top Chef Season 21, Episode 13 is Chef Amadeus, a man who will row to the furthest part of the ocean to go get some sushi from Chef Morimoto. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
So you had your hero, your chef that you look up to on this episode. Unfortunately, he was only in there for 15 seconds. But what did you think of him showing up? I thought he was going to be a judge, and unfortunately, he was not. So
well, I knew he had the ambassador, the seafood ambassador with Holland America Cruise Line, which is an amazing ship. I was a guest chef on Holland America Cruise Line, and I tell you, I had the best time. I was only supposed to do 2 demos, but I wound up doing 3 demos. And it was just fun to do. But having Morimoto on there, well, I'm like Dan said, hey, all of them were just in awe, couldn't believe that that's Morimoto cooking for them and serving them. That was just, and then Dan's like, hey, can I get your autograph, please? Can I get your autograph?
He was all of us. He was all of us on that moment.
Yes, so exactly. So like I said, Morimoto, I've always been a big fan of his since way back when. And that dude is just, and my conversations with him are just like he had with them, very, down to earth, no ego, just so down to earth. That's why he's on if you go to my Instagram at Chef Amadeus, that's my picture, me and Morimoto together.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, everybody looked slack-jawed, like they genuinely looked surprised, like they turned the corner and there's Morimoto. And I think at first they weren't registering like who that was, because
right.
You're kind of thinking you're in game mode, right? So you got your mean face on.
So let's put on our mean faces
for the game, and then you turn around, you look, and it's like, is that Morimoto behind the sushi bar? And they were treated to a nice little lunch with him, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, it was really neat seeing him. You don't see him on TV a lot anymore, so it was really great to see him on my TV screen. Since Iron Chef America is no longer in existence, which is a great show. I missed that show. So let's get right to it. We get to the quickfire challenge. I thought it was a really interesting quickfire challenge. There was apparently like a 6-week gap between when the last episode filmed and when they arrived in Curaçao. So their quickfire, they still have their suitcases with them, and they're going right into the quickfire. And it's a lionfish quickfire, and lionfish is really interesting because they talk about it being an invasive species in the Caribbean, and here in Florida, we live in Jacksonville, it's an invasive species here too. There's a lot of lionfish out in the Atlantic off of our coast, and people are encouraged to go kill them and eat them.
Yep, matter of fact, there are a couple of restaurants that have lionfish tacos and different things like that. I have not yet cooked with lionfish, but it is on my bucket list for this summer. We're gonna see about getting some lionfish, because I have some ideas I want to do. I've been talking with other chefs, like I always do, collaborate with different chefs, and I think with all the techniques that we've been talking about, and what I've seen, and all this good stuff, I got some ideas I want to do with lionfish. So yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, lionfish, if you've ever seen them before, it's a very beautiful fish, but they are invasive. They will eat anything and everything, and it's not natural to our waters here in Jacksonville, so it really screws up the environment and the ecosystem. And I've had it before. It's really good. It's just a mild white fish, so it's if you've ever had, I think they compared it to snapper on the show, and it's, very similar in texture and taste. So yeah, if you ever see lionfish on the menu, eat it because we need to get rid of those fish in our waters at least. So they have a signature dish in Curaçao called keshi yena, which is a mixture. It's some sort of a dish where they cook lionfish with Gouda cheese, which, that's usually a no-no in the chef
Yeah.
world, right? Fish and cheese.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of this keshi yena? Have you ever had it?
Nope. But what what dish did they make this week that I told you that they keep making?
I don't remember. What'd you say?
The aquafaba.
Oh, the aqua chile. Yeah, we get some. We get
Aqua chile.
Yeah, we get a couple of blasts from past challenges. We get an aqua chile, and then we get a fritter, another fritter, which was funny. But yeah, so Keshiana is the challenge. So it's their national dish. When the Dutch came over to Curaçao, they introduced Gouda cheese to the country, and now it's part of their official dish. And Savannah was studying up. She named it as soon as they talked about it, and she knew. So she's been studying up. So they had 30 minutes to create a dish using Gouda cheese and lionfish, and inspired by the Keshiena dish. Winner gets 10 grand, and the quickfires now don't matter. Again, we're in the finals, so it doesn't matter. I'm telling you, this whiplash-inducing thing about quickfires. I hope they don't do this next year because that was really frustrating to watch. So the quickfires are just money wins now. So it is what it is. So I thought it was pretty interesting because they showed the whole lionfish in there, and they said, okay, the spines are venomous, and still, even when they're dead, you stick your hand on that thing, it's going to cause some pain. So the chefs looked all concerned about having to butcher them, and they said, no, we're going to butcher them for you, so you just have to cook it. And they're like, oh, great. And Dan was like, oh, I thought it'd been interesting to poison one of us for us to go home, like a trial by combat or something.
I demand a trial by combat.
Yeah, so everybody cooks the best they can. Everybody does. Almost everybody. I think Danny was the only one that didn't, but everybody had some sort of raw preparation, which with 30 minutes, that's probably a safe move, right? If you're having to cook a fish you probably never worked with before, do you think a raw preparation in 30 minutes was the smart move?
No, because you could have. There's other techniques that they could have done besides just raw. Look at what Danny did. He did a fritter. I mean, you could have did a version of a fish and chips. You could have cured it, torched it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could have done that to give it to cook it with. Because like I say, all you need is you slice it thin enough. You could have did a shabu shabu, which would have been great to do with that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't seen anybody do shabu shabu on Top Chef yet.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, like I said, I mean, they're everybody's cooking safe now.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that when we get to the elimination challenge because I think they had 6 weeks off, and they lived their lives for 6 weeks. They showed Danny, he ran a marathon. Savannah got engaged, so life went on. But yeah, they come back, and I think it's almost like they're coming on to Top Chef for the first time again. Because we got a lot of repetitive dishes out of these four. We got a tartare, 2 crudos, and a croquette. So yeah, it was, everybody was kind of playing it safe here with the final four. I think Tom Colicchio said it best at the end. They're like, they kind of see it there at the end, and they don't want to go out. They don't want to put their neck out on the line too much because they're only one cook away from the final. But I don't know. I don't know. It was just odd to see them coming out of that 6-week gap and cooking honestly not great. This was kind of a frustrating episode to watch.
There was no clear winner of anything.
Right.
Because everything they sent out, there was always no one was like, oh yeah, amazing. Oh, easy win. They had to really collaborate to see who had the best dish, the worst dish, why it was the worst, what made that one worse than that one. I mean, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, they running out of gas.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the quick fire dishes for just a second. We had Dan doing a tartare with the lionfish, made an orange and Fresno aguachile with a Gouda frico. Laura did a lionfish crudo with a guava sauce and a Gouda crunch. Danny did a lionfish croquette with a Gouda sauce and a red cabbage slaw. And Savannah did a lionfish crudo with a Keshiyana inspired sauce, Gouda frico, and chili oil. Um, Dan's tartar dish had a nice herbaceousness, according to the judges. He had mayo in there to kind of bridge that gap with the fish and the cheese. Savannah had a tasty take on the Keshiyana. Danny got props for using cheese in a different way, but they didn't get a whole lot of lionfish flavor in the croquette. And Laura made good use of another local ingredient, which is guava. So that was good to throw that in there. But the winner on this one was Dan, and he hadn't had a win for a little bit in a quick fire, and he won 10 grand. So he's got 18 grand in his pocket for a quick fire challenge. Um, yeah, so we talked about this a little bit, but nobody really thought outside the box. There's a lot of raw applications on this one, and nobody cooked really anything in terms of using that lionfish. And it carried over into that elimination challenge, I think, where they were trying to play it a little bit too safe. What do you think about all that?
I agree. I mean, nothing was over the top. Like, wow. Even the pictures weren't on that level of we're at the end. There's four left. It wasn't on. It was that cooking was like there was like 12 left,
Yeah,
and somebody's trying to find the middle,
yeah, yeah,
and which was disappointing.
yeah.
Very disappointing.
I would agree with you there. I would agree with you with that. So we move on to the elimination challenge, and the elimination challenge is basically an 8-course tasting menu, and they really wanted to highlight the local fresh fish. Holland America is the corporate sponsor of this episode, not my episode. They're not paying me any money to mention their name, but Holland America was the corporate sponsor for this episode of Top Chef. And they have to use a different fish, and they have to cook it in specific preparations: raw, steamed, moose, poached, fried, roasted, smoked, and blackened. So they get 2.5 hours to prep and cook on board the ship, and they're provided with $100 and 10 minutes to buy produce at the local Venezuelan floating market. No Whole Foods there, but that floating market looked spectacular. That looked really cool. Like, I would love to go there and just walk around and see all the different produce that they had. The thing was interesting is they didn't know what fish they were going to cook or how they're going to cook it before they went shopping. So what's the strategy in shopping for produce for something that you don't know what you're gonna cook or how you're gonna cook it yet?
Everything has a base. Me personally, it would go with a sofrito. So because you can use sofrito in many different applications, whether it's a soup, stew, just so many different ways. But you pick the things that you pick your base, the things that you are comfortable with, the base of things, and then you can add the fish, the cheese, and everything on. As long as you have those applications down pat, those techniques, I think and they give you 10 minutes to go grab your core food. It should have been fun, and they walked away with some nice stuff.
Yeah, they got some really good things, some banana leaves and some coconuts, and again, they didn't know what was in the pantry either, so they're really shopping blind. So I think the key was to really find ingredients there at the floating market that were interchangeable, that could be used for multiple things. So the winner of this elimination challenge gets $10,000 in a 10-day Holland America cruise. Now, you've been on cruise ships, you've done demos and gone on cruises, I'm sure. I got to tell you, I don't think I'm into cruise ships. I can't think of any worse personal hell than being on a floating petri dish with a bunch of people for 10 days that I can't get away from, and who knows what communicable diseases are going around. So
yes, thank you. Welcome to my personal hell.
As far as a final location destination for Top Chef, I was personally a little let down. Curaçao looked great. If they just had it in Curaçao, that'd be awesome. But to have it on a cruise ship, man, I'm just like, oh, I'm just not into cruises at all. You've cooked on one. What do you think?
Holland American Cruise Line has some amazing restaurants. They don't just have one. They had several on there that was just great to go. And I was going to each one of them. Being on Holland American Cruise Line and the winners going on there, it's a clash of ages because there was a lot of elderly folks on the cruise. There was a lot of scooters and oxygen tanks.
Oh Lord.
The only time, but I think one of the best times we had on there, it was around the college playoffs, and everybody was around the bar, you know, rooting for their team or whatever. But they went to some really nice places. So like I said, all in all, if you want to get away from somebody and just you and your fiance like he is doing, that's a great place to go. It pulls in some really nice ports. The food on the ship was really, really nice. Yeah, he'll have a good time on there if they're going there. And of course, the room they're going to get is going to be nice. I had a balcony. They gave me a balcony room. Oh, dude, sitting on the balcony for a sunrise and a sunset. Can't beat it. Can't beat it.
Like I'm a weird guy. I love people, but I hate crowds. So being on a cruise
I'm
ship.
the same way. Listen. I love cooking in front of lots and lots of people and everything. But being in that crowd, I'm 5'1". I'm not a fan of being around that many tall people. I promise you I'm not.
I mean, I'm the same way. Like, and you can't get away from it. What do? Just jump over the edge. You just jump off the shit. You can't get away.
Yeah.
So
that's why I've never been to Essence Festival. I've never been to Mardi Gras. And not because I never had the opportunity. I've had plenty of opportunities to go. My friends like, hey man, we're going. My daughter like, oh, we're going to Essence Festival. Oh, we're going to Mardi Gras. Me, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't want to walk around that many people and be like, is this sweat mine or is this somebody else's? Like that's great.
Yeah, man. Don't want to do that.
So if I don't won this elimination challenge, I'm like, can you give me the cash value of that 10-day trip? Because I am not going on a cruise ship. I'm just not. I don't know. Somebody comment in there, tell me what I should do to change my mind on this on a cruise ship thing. But anyway, enough about that. So they're cooking on a cruise ship, and Savannah won the elimination challenge, so she gets the advantage of being able to choose her fish and method of cooking first. But she talks about being overwhelmed with options, kind of gets paralysis by analysis. And then they turn the corner, and Chef Morimoto is staring them in the face, and everybody's all starstruck. And like they said, there was a once in a lifetime opportunity, once in a lifetime dinner to be cooked by Morimoto directly, right? And being fed his food.
And I'm gonna tell you this here: of all the so-called celebrity chefs out there, Morimoto is the only one that that was on my bucket list. They're like, oh my God, because I've watched him cook. I've heard him give his story and what he did and all this stuff here. But the rest of these chefs, it's not. If I meet them, it's cool. But I never been like, oh my God, it's more. It's this guy is that guy. Nah, it's cool. But Morimoto is just like, yeah. I always say Morimoto is my Elvis.
Yeah. Well, he's like on another level. The original Iron Chef. When he was a celebrity chef before celebrity chefs were cool. So he's.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you what really drew me into Morimoto was when he was on the original Iron Chef. They would be mad at him because he was the Japanese chef, but he would do a lot of Western cooking and flavors and things like that. And he used to tell him, "Yes, I'm the Japanese chef, but I cook all kinds of food. I'm not just one dimensional." And then when the older faction, this is how deep I am. When the older faction got mad at him and started sending these chefs after him to beat him, and he was just mowing them down. And then, like I said, it just, his way of cooking is very clean, crisp. And then when I went to his restaurant in Philadelphia, because I saw the opening of it, the documentary on it, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to go there. So my client took me there for lunch, and I had an omakase dinner, omakase lunch, because I love doing omakase dinners. But I had his omakase, and hands down was like, oh, got it.
Yeah, that's got to be amazing. Got to be amazing. So he serves them a quick, 3-course lunch. They serve a tuna pizza course, which in the hands of anybody else sounds awful. When you hear the word tuna pizza, you're like, what in the world? But it looked beautiful on the plate. It looked like basically, a seared tuna salad on a crispy, crust, and it looked really good. And he had his sushi course with his signature, I forgot what he called it, the signature sushi that he makes that's square. It basically looks like a stained glass window. I mean, it's just beautiful, very beautiful. And then a dessert. So after that, he presents them with the list of fish that they're going to serve or cook with. So the list of fish is the Atlantic salmon, black bass, black grouper, dorade, monkfish, rainbow trout, red snapper, sea bream, and striped bass. Savannah chooses to go with the salmon raw and a striped bass for the fried. And then they go around playing dodgeball pick'em on the rest of them. So the way the rest of them went down is they're doing 8 courses. They're responsible for 2 dishes each. So course 1 is going to be Savannah doing Atlantic salmon raw. Laura's course 2 doing a steamed black bass. Danny's going to do a sea bream mousse. That was Danny, sorry. Dan's doing a poached dorade. Savannah is back again with a striped bass fried. Laura's going to be doing a roasted grouper. Danny's going to do a smoked rainbow trout, and Dan's going to bring up the caboose, as he says, with a blackened snapper. So the next day they go out on a little vacation. They're out on a private island. They swim with some stingrays, which was funny watching Dan freak out at touching nature. So I thought that was cute. And they're just kind of enjoying their last moments of relaxation before they have to go in and cook. So, let's talk about the meal service a little bit. So they're cooking all their dishes, and then Savannah's up first. She does a sake cured salmon roll with salmon tartare, twice fried plantain, ginger dressing. The judges said her dish had a lot of flavors packed into one roll, but didn't fit into everybody's mouth, and the sauce was a little grainy. So let's talk about that for a second. She had a perfectly smooth sauce that she did with some produce, and then I saw her spoon some pulp back in there. I'm like, what are you doing? And she said she was going to add it to thicken it up.
Because Tom was like, you should have strained it. She said, I did. And then put it back in there. So Tom was like, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Yeah. It's like she was trying to thicken it up. And I'm like, well, there's other ways to thicken it up without turning it into a grainy, into a, concentrated bowl of orange juice with pulp in it. I think, I don't know. I think she was kind of, and a lot of this, I think I can say for them for this elimination challenge, they were a little bit out of their head for a minute. Like they're probably doing things that outside of themselves, they look back and go, what was I thinking? And that one was one of them. I was like, why are you putting the pulp back in there? So that was nuts. Laura's up next with a black bass, ricotta negro, squash, and a fried plantain. She didn't clean her banana leaf. She tried to do her cooking application with the banana leaf, but she didn't clean it. So there was this bitter, like dirty smell and aroma coming out of it. Again, that's another rookie move out of Laura with Savannah.
I was very disappointed when she did that because you're from the Caribbean. You're from places that use banana leaves on a regular basis.
Right.
It's not like, once or twice. No, this is a daily thing and I'm sure her mom or grandmother told her, hey, this is how you do it on a regular basis. Every time you do banana leaves, you clean it, you char it a little bit. Those type of things should be instinct to someone like her.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can't be the first time you worked with banana leaves, that you didn't buy from a store that were already cleaned and already taken care of for you. So again, it's one of those what are you thinking moments and rookie mistakes that I don't know, the 6 weeks in between, they just kind of forgot about some stuff. So Danny's up next. He did a sea bream mousse with fine herb salad, scotch bonnet, and green garlic spheres. The spheres look great. I thought the spheres were very technical and very beautiful. But unfortunately, spending all that time on that, he screwed up his mousse. And the mousse had too much egg whites or not enough fat. Something went wrong, Tom said, which is not something you want to hear at the judges table. He wrapped it up, and so the condensation as he was cooking it hit the plastic, and then that water came back down into the mousse, and it just kind of flattened it out. It never souffled, as they said. That's, again, kind of an unforced error on Danny's part in a challenge that really should have been right up his alley.
So here's something else that I want the listeners to understand too. Not making any excuse for any of the chefs, but it's very difficult to cook on other people's stove and oven when you're used to yours. You know what your oven does, when it does it, the temperature, the hot spots, the cold spots, the griddle, hot spots, cold spots, all that. So that's one thing that people don't realize is if you cook really good ribs on at home and you come to my house on my grill, you don't know my grill. So these chefs don't know those ovens, those fryers and things like that, like they know theirs. And granted, it's supposed to be that's a fryer. I got a fryer. It's supposed to be 1-to-1, but it's not. Same thing with the ovens. And granted, their oven on Holland America Cruise Line are top notch, but it's just a weird little thing that if you don't bounce around from kitchen to kitchen, you wouldn't understand what they go through to do that. So my hat's off to everybody, the winners and the ones that got sent home, because I know how hard it is to cook on everybody's stove in everybody's kitchen. But technically speaking, some things you need to watch just to make sure your temp, like I say, a lot of them serve raw food. It's like, oh, mine was raw, mine was cooked. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you still have to do those basic thermometer checks on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah. So I do understand, cooking on other people's stuff. It's not yours. So you're having to get to know it, learn it a little bit. But some of those basic skills like checking temperature, before you serve a final plate should be ingrained no matter where you cook. And unfortunately, I think a lot of them forgot. So
same thing with it. Just like we talked about banana leaves, that's something that you should be just regular. Like I got banana leaves, I got to, toast
clean
it, wipe it down.
Yep, exactly. So Dan was up next. He did a poached dorade with coconut and turmeric, yucca fritter, grilled pumpkin, and a chili garlic crisp. Dan thinks Tom loved his dish because he cleaned his plate, which is a good indicator. But then they kind of didn't have some good things to say about it. It's like if you didn't like it, why did you clean your plate? So I was a little bit confused by that too. If I were Dan in his position, seeing Tom clean his plate, I'm like, oh, he must have loved it. But it was on the contrary. Dan's fish was raw, but others praised the spices. The yucca fritter added some like clunkiness to it, unfortunately, for some people. So he kind of went back to the kitchen thinking he was doing great. Unfortunately, he didn't do as good as he thought. Savannah did a fried striped bass baguette, pepper kosher, ahi amarillo aioli. This did not go well for Savannah, unfortunately. She hoped the flavors were good. The judges decided the fish is nicely fried, but it lacked juiciness, and the bread was too big, and the fish was cut too small, just a problem with proportions. And it was too dry. So a lot of those things kind of came into play, and it looked too simple. Like to be this deep in the competition with the final four, you're cooking, and I think it was Tom that said it, you're cooking a dish that looks like it should have been at the beginning of the show instead of at a final four. So Savannah, coming off of her huge run, basically since episode 8 or 9, it kind of stumbles and falls here. So what do we think about Savannah after this 6-week break?
Not just her, all of them.
Yeah, all of them, for real.
Whatever you say about Savannah, you gotta say about the other three, because they've all just dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah, no, that's true. So Laura comes back with a grouper with guajillo pepper glaze and guajillo exo emulsion and a pineapple broth. Again, some inconsistencies. Some of the fish was undercooked. Kristen's fish was nearly raw. She said she couldn't cut it. Tom also thinks the fish was baked, and she called it roasted, but by definition, it wasn't. She just kind of brushed some sauce on it and threw it in the oven. That's not roasted, is it?
No.
Yeah, not at all. And it just kind of came out weird. So she called it one thing and it wasn't that. And it's just like no one is rising to the occasion. Everyone's just kind of phoning it in. Again, I don't know if that break was just too long and they come back and it's like it's day one all over again, which you can't be doing that. You should have been, I don't know, practicing over the last 6 weeks, like you talked about last week. You got to keep the game mode in your head, especially the closer to the refilming that you have to get to. You got to stay in that game mode. Danny did a smoked rainbow trout, plantain pumpkin puree, and a hazelnut lemon relish. Texturally, it was nice with the foam because I think they said the fish was kind of dry, but that foam added some moisture to it. Tom loved the texture. Gail thought it was an amazing through line between the hazelnut and the smoke. So Danny had a good kind of second dish. And then Dan saved the best for last. He did a blackened snapper, butter poached potatoes, mandarin butter sauce, and dill oil. It was pretty funny talking about Dan saying blackened being on the list of cooking techniques. He said, there's a reason why people don't do blackened anything anymore. And Tom even said that, or was it Tom? No, it was one of the guest judges said that, if people blackened their fish like you did today, then we wouldn't have left it in the 90s.
As if.
So, I mean, I don't know. I still see blackened stuff on menus all the time. I didn't realize it was kind of a passe thing now.
Well, a matter of fact, last night I had a blackened chicken sandwich at a golf course, and it was pretty good. But I'm not a big fan of chicken breast being blackened because it dries out.
Oh God, no! That's awful.
It's way too quick. So I think the flavor was good, but the meat was just putting some exercise on your jaws.
So Dan's dish, they described it as comforting and makes you feel good, which as a chef, those are the words you want to hear, right? Beyond that it's good, that it tastes nice, but comforting, where you're evoking an emotional response out of the diner. That's what you're looking for. Just with anybody that does any kind of art form, whether it's a painting, dancing, singing, cooking, is what you want is an emotion, whether it's anger, fear, hate, or love. The one thing you don't want is indifference, right? So to make somebody feel comforted and to feel good is probably the best compliment you can give to anybody that's in the arts. And they said the potato was nice and salty and creamy. Kristen said the juiciest piece of fish she had today. So it sounds like Danny and Dan, through their last couple of dishes, have probably made it into the final. We're at this point in watching the show. Is that what you thought? Like when I was watching, I was like, yeah, Danny and Dan are officially in.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's a matter of like who cooked worse between Laura and Savannah.
Well, when Laura put up her dish with the guava, I wasn't a fan of that dish. I didn't like the way it looked. It looked like it didn't have any texture to it. Everything was soft. She just made a lot of at this point, it's technical mistakes. I just think that she was trying way too hard. She was trying hard not to go home, and in that part, her dish failed. I think all of them was doing that. Let me just put a dish up so I don't go home.
Right.
Not to win, but just don't go home.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like I used to work at a radio station back in college, and we would play music, and our station manager always said, we don't want people to necessarily love or hate our music. We just don't want them to turn it off. We want them to keep listening. Whether they like this music or not like the music, we don't care. We just want to make sure that they don't turn off the music. And that's kind of what I think happened here is exactly what you were saying. They were cooking not to go home. They weren't cooking to win.
Right.
And, yeah. So I think that was the big thing there. So, I mean, Judge's Table was brutal. This is probably the most brutal Final Four. Yeah, I can't off the top of my head think of a more brutal Judge's Table for the Final Four. I mean, they're talking about raw fish. They're talking about dry bread. They're talking about bad ideas. They're talking about curdled sauces and grainy sauces. Like at this point of the competition, the judges should be saying you tweezered a microgreen wrong, not you served me raw fish. Right? I mean, this is where you are eliminating chefs by nitpicking things, not saying, look, you served raw fish, man, you got to go home. You should not be serving raw fish this deep into the competition.
They're like, it's four of us, somebody's going to screw up.
Yeah. I don't need to outrun the bear. I just need to outrun you is kind of what we were doing.
Okay. Yeah, let's go with that. But that was crazy. But yeah, I was kind of disappointed about this whole them not bringing their A game.
Yeah, it was kind of rough to watch a Final Four go through this. But top of the judge table were Danny and Dan, based on those last two dishes that they brought it home. And the winner was Danny. So Danny wins the elimination challenge. So he gets 10K and a 10-day cruise. So good for him. So the bottom of the judges table was Laura and Savannah. Savannah's was basic and uninspired, but at least it had good flavor. Laura made some major mistakes. I think the death knell was those unclean banana leaves and then the not roasted baked fish that she called roasted. So based on those two factors, I think that's how they decided that Laura goes home.
Yep.
So close, yet so far. But yeah, like I said, I think this was a pretty rough episode to watch. I think overall the cooking on this particular season, we talked about it in the past, has just been underwhelming. There was flashes of brilliance throughout, but not overall. I think the cooking was not as good as previous seasons. But so the finale is set. We have Savannah, Danny, and Dan. Who do you think, based on their performance throughout the season, what are your odds on who's going to win? Who do you think's going to be top chef this season?
Well, I have to say this, and I said this earlier. I like what Dan is doing.
Yeah.
What Dan is doing. Well, I like all three of them. Like I said, even though wasn't on my team, I still like him. But I think all that goes out the window after a performance like this week, because all three of them are literally at the bottom.
Yeah.
All three of them at the bottom. Is it going to be who cooked the worst or who cooked the best? Because this show showed who cooked just to go to the finale.
Yeah.
Who cooked just enough to get over that hump. And no one cleared the hump. They stumbled over the hump to get into the final. No one just, in previous seasons, there was chefs that just walked into the final like, okay, good job, you did it. But it seemed like everybody getting over that speed bump was everybody couldn't make it over.
Yeah, if not Danny and Dan hitting it out of the park with those last two dishes, I honestly would not have been able to tell you who would have gotten eliminated because it was all kind of rough. But for me,
it's hard to say to pick one of those. Like I say, Dan's he got this extra boost of fire, and Danny just won, and Savannah, she was on this streak, so it's anybody's match at this. Because like I say, they all made technical mistakes that if they were in the finale right now, it would be a harder choice for the judges than it is, oh, we just send them through the finale. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not, they're cooking mediocre one step from the big game.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when the game shows up?
Yeah, I'm hoping this kind of wakes them up again a little bit. Even at the judges table when they were done, it was almost like they gave the same type of pep talk that Kristen and Buddha gave at the end of episode 1. Like, look, cook who you are. This is the once in a lifetime experience for you. You don't know if you're going to be able to do this again. So cook with your heart. I personally, I think Danny's got the technical acumen to pull off the final win, because usually the last, the finale is usually, cook the best meal of your life. And I think Danny has the technical expertise. Those spheres were just a glimpse into that. The Chaumushi, he's had some great dishes. So
if Danny were to cook in the finale like he cooked at the architect thing,
exactly,
out of the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Danny, by all means.
And he's got that in his bag. Savannah has been studying, so she has the capability to do it. I think all three of them have the capability to do it, but I think Danny has the technical expertise to pull it out. So I'm calling a Danny win. We'll see what happens next week, but I think Danny's going to be your next top chef. In my heart, though, I'm kind of rooting for Savannah and Dan, because I think Savannah is the underdog that we all love to cheer for, and she's been on a streak. Really hope she kills it. Rooting for Dan, kind of in that same underdog position, especially with with him representing Kennedy's disease, just man, the platform that this will give him to say, look, I have this degenerative disease. If I can go on Top Chef and win this thing, then you, as if speaking to others that have this type of disease, don't let that stop you. So, I kind of in my heart want Savannah or Dan to win, but I really feel like Danny's got the technical expertise here.
I've always said, especially in these last few episodes, that when they said your time starts now, everybody runs except for Dan. So for him to get where he is right now and not able to run as fast as the others or anything like that, like I said, it'd be great if Dan won. But like I say, technically, I'm with you. Danny is the guy. But here's the thing: we say that about the upcoming show,
right?
But we should have saw that this show.
Yeah.
We should have saw that the technical of Danny, the surprising of Savannah, the comfort of Dan, but we didn't see that. All we saw was y'all made it.
Yeah. It was kind of like watching like when Jordan retired from the Bulls, went and played baseball for a while, and then came back to play for the Wizards. It just wasn't the same Jordan, right? It was just a little bit of ring rust, and it just wasn't the same watching him play for the Wizards as it was playing for the Bulls. So I kind of feel like that's what the 6-week gap was. They were shaking off that ring rust. So I'm hoping they got it all taken care of, and I'm hoping for a much more competitive finale to say this is what Top Chef is all about, is this type of cooking, this high-end, no holds barred, just imaginative, creative, narrative cooking that we're used to seeing out of Top Chef that unfortunately this season has produced less of. So we'll see how it goes. Draft point update for this episode. So the quickfire winner was Dan. That got you 5 points. And he was also at the top of the judges table, so he got 3 extra points. So that's 8 points total for Dan. Danny got 7 points for winning the elimination challenge. So that got you 7 points. Actually, Dan was on my team. I keep getting the Danny's confused. So Dan got me 8 points. Danny got you 7 points. And unfortunately, bottom of the judges table is Laura and Savannah, both being on your team, -2 points each. So I actually won an episode this season by a score of 8-3. So yay me. But the show totals are way out ahead at 121 for Team Southern Passion Lounge and Team Eat Your Content at 49. So I'm, again, mathematically out of this. But, I'm almost at the Monopoly flipping table of this game and not even count. I almost didn't count points.
On the table! Smash! No!
Because I'm like, there's no way I'm going to win. But I won an episode, so I wanted to highlight that. I won an episode this season. So it was a good time. So, yeah, I think we did it. We knocked out the penultimate episode. We got one more left, man. It's been 14. It'll be 14 weeks that we've been spending time together, recapping this Top Chef, and we got one more left to go.
Well, it's been fun. It's been a lot of, observing techniques and different things. I learned some things watching the show.
Good.
Some techniques that I haven't used in a while that I like. Wow, I haven't did that one in a while.
Write that one down.
Exactly. I gotta do that one. But all in all, like I say, it's been fun having this discussion about what chefs are and giving that perspective from someone who's competed on a television show.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said in several episodes, that gorilla gets on your back. And sometimes it's hard to shake it off. I mean, it is that time between time and just your mind's running a mile a minute, and you want to do a good dish, but you're like perfect example, putting pulp back in a dish that you strained.
Yeah. It's like in the back of your head that's wrong, but you're having this out of body experience of I'm putting this here and I don't know why I'm doing it.
and you know what? And you can't say, well, you can say what the hell were you thinking? But in her mind, it made sense at that moment.
Right. I need to thicken this up. I have pulp over here that'll thicken this up. Not thinking later it's going to be grainy. Yeah.
Right. So But yeah, like I said, but once again, we talk about how mediocre they cook this week and everything like that. But hats off to all four of these chefs from what they accomplished getting to this point. And like I said, I guarantee you, every chef that went home for something technical, you go to their restaurants, it's probably on their menu, and they're blowing it out of the water. I mean, everyone that's left, I'm sure you go to a restaurant, yeah, they're
Yeah,
blowing it out of the water.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So what do you got going on over the next couple of weeks that you want people to be aware of? Where can they find you on socials?
Wow. So there's a lot. So I am, you can find me on Instagram at Chef Amadeus. Um, I'm on TikTok at Chef Amadeus, uh, Facebook, fans of Chef Amadeus. My website, chefamadeus.net. You can purchase my spices and all that good stuff. So what I have going on, so I am working with some kids. We're getting their podcast up and running. That's why mine hasn't been up. I've been working with some young kids to get their podcast up. There's going to be a grilling show happening here in Jacksonville. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll hear about that one, more about that one. So just follow me on Instagram, and you'll hear more. Instagram and Facebook. You'll get more information about that. But it's going to be a lot of fun because I'm working with kids, teaching them about how to be in the restaurant. We're going to teach them about shooting TV shows, about the editing, the whole 9 yards. So it's just going to be a lot of fun.
That sounds
And
great.
and a big shout out to all the chefs, all my chef friends that have I reached out to them, and they're like, dude, tell me what you need and we'll have your back. So it's going to be great having all these chefs coming through the Boys and Girls Club, and then vice versa. We're going to a lot of restaurants. For those chefs that reached out and said I could bring them to their restaurant or their kitchen, I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm working with kids from seventh grade to 12th grade. Teach them how to cook.
Awesome.
That's a lot of fun.
Raising a new generation of chefs and hopefully podcasters. So that'd be fun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Awesome. So make sure you follow him on socials at Chef Amadeus. He'll keep you updated on all that. And also remember to follow me on socials at Rich Herrera and at Eat Your Content on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that, and YouTube. And also don't forget, I have Chef Suan going to be on the podcast on Wednesday, June 19th. So make sure you like, follow, subscribe on your podcast player of choice, so you know when that's going to be coming out. You'll be able to listen to it hot off the presses. Chef, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. We got one more week to go, and we'll see you next week.
I look forward to it.